My name is Christina, and I'm 25 years old. I'm a bit of a recluse, meaning I keep to myself a lot. Even though I have a job and am not in school or training, my family, especially my brother, might see me differently. I ended up this way because I have trouble trusting people. This mistrust started back in middle school. I felt ignored by others, probably because they didn't find me interesting. I was always fascinated by machines and computers, and I was good at fixing things related to them. This made me helpful at home, but my grades started to drop because I spent more time with computers than hanging out with friends. My parents grew worried and started scolding me. They asked me how long I was going to keep playing with machines. By the time I graduated from elementary school, their concerns increased. As I moved into middle school, the scolding made me feel like I shouldn't do what I enjoyed. I began to isolate myself in my room after school to avoid their notice, completely cutting off from the outside world. This led to others calling me weird or dangerous, and I became isolated at school too. During this tough time, my only support was my brother Keith. From a young age, he was good at cheering me up and motivating me. With his support, I felt a bit better. I managed to finish compulsory education but didn't go to high school. Instead, I focused on jobs I could do from home using my computer. After graduating from middle school at around 16, I started working part-time. I used the money I earned to buy old computers, take them apart, and rebuild them from scratch. By the time I was 20, I could build computers that I could sell. I started a business offering affordable computers, and soon I became well known in that field. By 25, I had made a small fortune. I even earned enough to contribute $2,500 to my parents' household each month while still having extra money for myself. Although I talked to my parents about my job several times, they didn't really understand it. After some arguments, they decided that as long as I could support myself, they didn't mind what I did. This agreement meant my parents stopped interfering with my choices since I was contributing financially, allowing me to live freely at home. However, my brother, who had always supported me and understood me when I was a student, now seemed less impressed. He used to be very kind, but maybe he was getting frustrated with the fact that, even after turning 20, I was still staying in my room at our parents' house, constantly working on machines. Eventually, my brother started treating me harshly whenever he saw me. Since I wasn't one to keep quiet, our conflicts increased and our relationship worsened. Things got even worse after my brother got married. His wife, who he'd been involved with since high school, had never thought much of me. She didn't like that she was now my sister-in-law and seemed to have influenced my brother negatively. Because of this, I was labeled the plague of the family home. Even though I stayed in my room, I felt deeply hurt by the constant hostility, which was different from the concerned words of my parents. My parents' home, which had once been a comfortable place, turned into a place where I felt unwelcome. I started feeling like my parents were siding with my brother and sister-in-law, and my allies were disappearing. Despite having a good income and contributing to household expenses, my brother and sister-in-law saw me as a freeloader. They began threatening to kick me out of the family home and take over living there with our parents. I was completely estranged from my brother and his plans to kick me out of the family home. Since it seemed like they wanted me out, I figured it wouldn't matter much if I left once I found a new place to live. After all, if I wasn't contributing to household expenses anymore, I could save that money instead, which was actually a positive aspect of the situation. When I was thinking about moving out, my brother suddenly brought up the topic of inheritance. He seemed to misunderstand why I could live comfortably while staying at home. He thought it was because our parents had money, not realizing it was actually the money I contributed that allowed them to live comfortably. He told me that since I would be leaving, I should give up my claim to the inheritance so they could take over the family home and its assets. I didn't think our parents could keep living as they had without the money I was providing. But to my brother, I was just a burden. I decided to confirm this one more time, asking him if he was really okay with me leaving. He laughed condescendingly and said they would be happy if I left right away. This made me realize again how little he understood the situation and made me feel pity for him and his wife, further strengthening my decision to leave. A few days after my brother's declaration, I was still staying in my room. During this time, my brother and sister-in-law were relentless in their attempts to force me out. They kept knocking on my door, got Mom to stop providing me meals, and even insisted that I do my own laundry. These were things I would have had to do on my own anyway if I lived alone, so I didn't find them particularly troublesome. I wasn't just passively accepting what they said. I felt I was unfairly being pushed out of my own home. Of course, I wasn't going to leave without setting up some kind of revenge. I'm good with machines, and my brother seemed to forget that having free access to a computer meant I could do a lot more than just quietly leave. My brother's marriage and my role as a shut-in sister were the only chances for our parents to see a grandchild, so with them approving of my departure, I decided to set a trap that would activate as soon as I left the house. Once I found a new place, finished the necessary paperwork, and got ready to move, I left a parting message for my parents and brother. I reminded them of all the support I provided and hoped they would realize who the real burden on the family was. My parents seemed surprised for a moment, but they probably thought my brother would handle things. They brushed off my words, seeing them as just sour grapes, and didn't take me seriously. I decided to move out anyway. I took a lot of equipment from the family home, bought additional items, and furnished my new place to my liking. I created a comfortable space that made living alone much easier than I expected. The local people were friendly and life was surprisingly good. A while after moving out, I wondered if my family was struggling without my income. Then, I received a call from my mother. She asked if I had done something to their computers and electronics. I told her I didn't know what was wrong and that since I was no longer part of the family home, they have to pay the regular price for repairs. My mother complained about being charged full price, saying they were my parents and asking for a discount. I told her I preferred to give discounts to friends who treat me well, unlike them. She ended the call abruptly and sent a spiteful email accusing me of being a mean kid who loses friends. It made me wonder who the real adult was in the situation. Honestly, my actions might have seemed self-centered or even selfish. All I did to the family computer was revert the settings I had adjusted for free back to their original state. To someone who isn't tech-savvy, it probably looked like the computer started malfunctioning on its own. When I told them they needed to contact a professional for repairs, they threw a tantrum, but I expected that. 6 months after moving out and getting used to living alone, my father called me. He asked if I could lend him some money. I was surprised and asked why. He explained that my brother and his wife had been spending money recklessly and were constantly demanding more. They seemed to think that we had plenty of money, and my father was frustrated by their complaints and requests. I told my father that it seemed odd for him to ask me for money when parents should typically provide for their children out of generosity. He insisted that even $500 would help, but I refused. I made it clear that I wasn't willing to help financially anymore. If they wanted me to work on their machines, they would have to pay me for my services. My father complained about my newfound stinginess and mentioned things Mom had said about me. He had criticized me during my unemployed years, but I didn't let it bother me and just hung up. Despite not receiving any emails from him, he started calling me multiple times a day. I thought to myself, what troublesome parents I have. A few days after my father started calling me constantly, my brother, clearly in a tough spot, reached out as well. When I asked him why they were calling, he wanted to know why our family home was once wealthy. He seemed to realize that their financial situation had worsened since I moved out, but by then, it was too late. My new home was comfortable, and I had no intention of leaving it. I had been contributing $2,500 each month to the household out of gratitude for being raised by my parents. But after being kicked out, I saw no reason to keep supporting the home financially. My brother's realization that our family's financial problems stemmed from my absence was too late. I told him clearly that I had no intention of returning or helping them financially. Apologies now were useless, and I was determined to cut ties completely. I hung up on him despite his protests. Determined not to be involved with them again, I canceled my cell phone contract to avoid further calls. 5 years have passed since then, and I've been living happily on my own, married to a partner who understands my lifestyle and helps with housework. Although I considered contacting my parents, it felt too late. My husband expressed interest in meeting them, so I hired a detective to check on their situation. The investigation revealed that after I cut off contact, my parents had been struggling to maintain their lifestyle and support my brother and his wife. They borrowed money from various lenders, but the debt kept piling up with no hope of repayment. My parents' debt alone had exceeded $100,000. The family home was used as collateral for the debt, and now the property where it once stood is just a vacant lot. Although I felt a twinge of sadness about the loss of the home I had a personal attachment to, I knew that my family was facing the consequences of their own actions. In investigating my brother's current situation, I learned that his wife's extravagant spending habits had led them to a divorce lawsuit. Despite the ongoing legal battle, their situation was dire, and my brother's wife was resisting the divorce, leading to an impasse. Adding to the complexity, rumors suggested my brother was infertile, which was confirmed by the detective's findings. He was diagnosed with a condition that made natural conception nearly impossible. My parents, who had hoped for a grandchild and had kicked me out when that didn't happen, were now facing the reality of their decisions. The family home was sold off to cover the mounting debt, leaving them in a pitiable state. From my perspective, reconnecting with them now would not be beneficial. My life has moved on significantly. I have a loving husband, 4 children, and a dog. We live in a spacious home and enjoy a fulfilling life, a stark contrast to the struggles my family faces. I took steps to ensure my contact information was protected and that I maintained distance from my family, explaining the situation to my husband, who, though disappointed, understood my decision. When the situation at my family home settles and a possibility for reconciliation arises, I hope there will be a chance for mending relationships. For now, I am focused on my own family and well-being, content with the life I've built.